All right, Charles, we're going to get some purpose and structure into the next several episodes of FranX. So what we're going to do, we're calling this the complete guide to buying a franchise, which is a guide that the FTC has on their website. But you and I, and when Brent is available, will give guidance into what should fit into this guide and what's our take on each of the topics. So we're going to talk holistically today. We'll break down what's going to happen in the next few weeks. But this is the complete guide to buying a franchise. All right, the lead in for this, Charles, is every brand that I've spoken with since I started doing the Meet the Zor podcast, which you can find on my channel. You could subscribe to my channel, the 1851 video channel, or you could subscribe to Charles's channel. Charles has a lot more subscribers than me. He wins the popularity contest. But I ask all these franchisors, and I'm focused heavily on the franchisor right now. My question is, go back to day one before you became educated in franchising. What was your perspective and what is your reality today? And how misaligned is it? And they're like super misaligned. And so it's landing me on this viewpoint that for franchise buyers, the candidates, there's no way they understand what franchising is, and they don't know where to look for a resource. So in today's world, most of them land in a broker network because they're going to educate them on what franchising is. And so you land on a franchisor's website and it goes, buy my franchise. But imagine trying for a car dealer to sell a car to a 10-year-old. Like they're like, yeah, I would like to buy a car. I don't know how to drive it. So I think it's the responsibility of the franchisor and the franchise industry to try to give information on how you buy a franchise. So what I did is I pulled up the FTC, ftc.gov, to pull how are they attempting to educate franchise buyers on what franchising is. And the topics that we're going to go through over the next few weeks: the franchise business model, is a franchise right for you, finding the right opportunities, selecting a franchise, the franchise disclosure document, evaluating potential earnings, and what to know before you sign the franchise agreement. This is how they lay it out. So holistically speaking, I'm going to give you a multitude question. Do you feel there's education missing to the franchise buyer at the start point? Does the FTC, is this book a good place for us to start with on disclosing some topics? And shouldn't franchisors educate the franchise buyer what franchising is before even talking about an offering? That's the opening statement.
So I like those topics. I think that's a good starting point. And then your last point, should franchisors educate them? Yeah, right. And I think your point, the implication is it's the big opportunity that they're missing. And if it's not educating as to the formality of this is what an FDD is and whatnot, but approaching their marketing through an education framework of here's how our franchise does it and I think that's always a winning strategy. But yeah, I mean, there's a big mystery in franchising. I like the topics. The one, not that we're discussing it, but the one that sticks out the most for me as I think about franchising is I would create a big neon sign that says, not all franchises are the same. And this is vetted by no government entity, right? And so, but I think that's a great starting point for us.
So the FTC is often seen as the big bad devil of franchising. But in this sense, I thought the document was pretty sound on them saying, let's give you at least a viewpoint. Now, do I think a lot of franchise buyers land in here? Probably not. But they're trying to say there is some guidance into how you should evaluate a franchise.
I'm pulling up the guide. Yeah, no, I've read the guide before. They do a good job.
But you know what they don't do is and this is probably this is a big gap with IFA and IFA's approach to trying to educate policymakers on what franchising is. FTC doesn't lean on franchise experts, even though who's a franchise expert, but they don't lean on experts to help answer parts of these guide, or how can they have a different viewpoint or further establish some of the points that are in here.
Yeah,
But
I'm looking at it right now. It's sort of, and like they did a good job. It's a very sanitized version of buying a franchise, right? Like when I see statements like a franchise enables you, the investor or franchisee, to operate a business, right? So it's very sanitized.
well, and that's look. I think that's one of I love that word, sanitize. I think that's one of the biggest challenges for a franchise buyer. Like my opening statement was you ask anybody that's in franchising, go back before they got into it, did they understand it? And the answer is no.
Correct.
We go over to the franchise buyer and we're saying, here's our offering. And so franchisors often say, why don't my leads call me back? And it's probably because they were intrigued. They might have filled out the form, but then they had this knee-jerk reaction of saying, well, what am I getting myself into and what does it mean? And then they go backwards and like, okay, who can educate me on this? And there's not a lot of resources. And therefore that's where I see if FranX is going to win for franchising, we have to be an educator and try to do it as unbiased as possible on our viewpoints based on the collective experience that we have to say, like, this is what you need to know.
So where do you want to start today?
Well, let's start general terms, because I want us to stay focused on breaking down our viewpoints on each of these topics as we continue over the next, I guess it's 7 weeks. So this is going to take us 7 weeks to get through this. But in general, if I said I'm a friend of yours and said, Charles, you're a franchise expert, where should I start at figuring out what kind of franchise I want to buy?
Well, I think I would start with, if we're building our guide here, what is franchising, who it's good for, and why not all franchises are the same.
So that's how you would advise a friend. You would educate them generally?
Right. So I would first, it would be a friend, so I would know them already. And I would say franchising is probably not a good fit for you because of you're an existing business owner, you've built businesses, and you're not a prototypical franchisee who would do well in a franchise system. Or I think franchising can be a great fit for you because you have capital, you have the ability and time to scale and grow a new business, and I think you have the right. So I would first be evaluating their skill set.
You know what's interesting? What you just said?
Mm-hmm.
You made it very binary. It was either franchising is not right for you or franchising is an excellent fit for you. And there's probably a tremendous insight in that franchising can't play in gray area, because if you're gray area towards not being successful or your gray area towards being successful, if you're somewhere in the middle, there's no way your expectations will be met as a franchisee.
Yeah, look, I think that's a great insight, because it's if you meet the profile, so you're a prospective franchise buyer, if you meet the right profile in terms of your personal goals, capitalization relative to the franchise investment, expectations, and alignment on income generation, whether it's dual income or not, you take those factors and assume they all check off, then I think franchising is a great fit. Then your next challenge is finding the right franchise, right? So whether you win or lose at that point is whether or not you aligned with the right franchise system and did what you're supposed to do. And then there's a host of people that just shouldn't consider it. Undercapitalized, wrong expectations, doesn't align with their personal and business goals, those types of things.
Okay, so stay on those. I think you just gave a great point. So before you even come to the table and say, let me pick a franchise, financial, like, are you financially equipped? You and I have talked with financiers, like ballpark number that we hear is somewhere in the range of 20%, much like buying a house. You're going to need 20% of the cash necessary to buy that business. So if the business is $100,000 all in, you're going to need to at least have $20,000 in the bank to work through the financing to get that financed. We'll start on the financial side. From my viewpoint, right, wrong, or indifferent, I feel you should be qualified to buy 3. So let's say it's a $100,000 investment. In order for franchising to work where you're going to get to, unless you have this magical grit or hustle, you're going to need $60,000 cash in the bank so that you can get through unit 1, you can leverage financing, and then you have some put away for a rainy day, and you have some to scale your business when it's time to scale. Like you put aside the cash to do so. That's where I tend to advise a franchise buyer. Where are you at on that?
Well, that's solid advice and analysis. I think a step before that really starts with, so that would be step whatever 4. And assuming that's step 4, step 3 is starting with, what are your expectations from the franchise investment? What do you need it to do?
It's fair.
Right? So what are those economic expectations? Are you buying it to supplement lifestyle, supplement income replacement, legacy building? So the opportunity you're looking for needs to be clarified, right? And then once you understand that, well, it's a dual income family. I'm going to keep my job. I want supplemental income. Or I don't have a job, so I just want to supplement income. Versus my whole family depends on me, leaving corporate America, investing my capital. I need to replace income and support my family. Well, then we're going into that, your analysis, which is key. And so that whole universe, that economic expectation and need is critical in the buying process.
Well, take that, right? And we're trying, like, this is the framework of where we're going to get to in talking through this guide. But right now we're talking to someone that's considering buying a franchise. And my viewpoint is, if you're trying to replace your income, like in essence, buy yourself a job that you are your own boss of, there's 2 risks on that. One is changing expectations. I'll put it this way. I like my sports analogies. When Aaron Judge got his contract, which now I'm curious what the total was. Let me use the Aaron Judge contract. $360 million over 9 years. So that was last year. So that means the contract will expire in 2032. And so in 2032, like the way that I heard a sportscaster talk about this, they're like, wow, you're going to pay Aaron Judge $360 million over 9 years? Nobody ever plays at that level 9 years from now. 9 years from now, though, $36 million a year is going to be lower salary for Major League Baseball at the pathway that we're going. And so for a franchise buyer, you're buying a business. For most cases, it's going to be a 10-year agreement, right? And so you're buying into it. You're like, I just want to replace my income. But 10 years from now, you might be in a different place where you want to build wealth, or you want to buy something, you want to pay for your kids' education or something else. And I think that's where, if I look at franchisees that have failed, they don't spread out their vision long enough to sustain the totality of the agreement. And then where is their head going to be, and what is the value of their business then? So that's one, is where's your head at in 10 years, and what is the value of that money? For Aaron Judge, $36 million past 2030 is not going to be the same value as $36 million in 2024. Second statement is, if I look at resumes, and even the resumes of franchisees, they still switch jobs. Like, today's world is switching jobs in a best case scenario, 2 or 3 years. In most case scenarios, under a year. And so if you're just doing this to replace your career income, and you're mentally, that you've checked out of jobs in the past, what's going to prevent you from doing that as a business owner? And now you just leveraged your entire wealth and life savings to take this risk without thinking through that. So I'm making this complex, but I think more pressure at the front end, which you said in the scenario that we were talking about you talking to a friend, you're like, version one, don't buy this don't buy franchise, not right for you. And that's where now we've gone back to your point 3 before we even get to the financials. What is the mission of this? And you got to think beyond 12 months. You got to think long term here.
Yeah, right. And then that falls right into your analysis, which is, okay, here's the opportunity I'm looking for economically. Here's my expectations. And then comes in your advice, which is, okay, this is great. You love the industry. You're a dedicated person. You're all in. And then to your point, you have the capital. And Nick, your advice is, whoa, slow up. Just buy one territory right now and have extra capital to open up 3 more down the line. I was speaking with a client this morning, and he's having his conference come up, and very kind, and invited us to his conference. And he's like, you talk about a photo when it was just him and one other franchisee and how they're scaled. But we were also speaking, goes, Charles, these other guys, competitors are, they're selling a lot of franchises. He goes, but I'm looking at the territory, and what I give is 1 territory for my franchisee, they're treating as 3. And what I'm charging at X, they're charging $150K an initial franchise fee. And he legitimately said, but that's contrary to my mission. So to your point, once you understand if there's economic alignment on the, you not only need the capital to open up, you need that reserve capital to expand, weather a storm, and grow and not over purchase territory. So,
well, you just said something else. I want to pull this up. So I just searched within this guide for the term franchise fee. Franchise fee, the only references to it is what is the initial franchise fee and what are the additional startup costs. Item 5 through 7, what they mean. You pay a franchise fee, initial franchise fee. Your initial franchise fee will typically range from tens of thousands of dollars to several hundred thousands of dollars and may not be refundable. You may face significant costs to rent, build, and equip an outlet and to buy initial inventory. You may also have to pay for operating licenses and insurance and a grand opening fee to the franchisor to promote your new outlet. That is the only definitions that are in this guide. And what you just said, which call this a huge opportunity of education back for the buyer. If you're taking your 2, 3, 4, 5 brands that you're looking at and you stack them next to each other, you just had your example was you said he's a good dude. You have a franchisor that's like, we're going to give you a sizable territory because we believe that this is how you're going to best win in business. And he said, I'm annoyed because there's a competitor that is selling that as a 3-pack for the same territory size. They're getting 150 in franchise fees. If I were to break this down without knowing what category you're talking about, what brand 2 at 150, the reason it's 150 is because they need more money to pay the franchise brokers. The franchise brokers are going to move that brand faster because they get more in commissions. And ultimately, who pays the commissions? It's the franchisee. And therefore, 2 things happen at the bottom of that example. Franchisee has less money to operate their business. Franchisor has less money to support the franchisee. And so you think about that, but apples to apples, the franchise buyer who is uneducated, who nobody's talking through, like, let's look at the difference in the fees. They don't even know that that's a thing that they should be looking at. And so now,
and that same exact industry, they could spend a fraction of the cost, have a bigger territory, and in this case, a lower royalty.
But your good guy brand, the brand that is conditioned to make franchisee success, is technically the loser brand because the franchise brokers won't move it because they're not going to get the commissions.
Yeah, and credit to them, they look at their system as winning, they're growing, and they've resigned themselves to the fact that that's not their pathway, and that. Part of the conversation was also was, I don't know if I said it was, I hope that franchisor knows what they're doing, because they may be seeding a franchisee rebellion 10 years from now or 4 years from now.
Okay, so we've gone through some of the costs, and we're uncovering things. Like we just talked about a franchise fee that clearly is not in this FTC's guidance, but
right. And Nick, I love this point of view that you're looking through the guideline, because they have some really good points. It's just they're sanitized. It's hard to connect with them. They come off as generic, but there are actually some insightful questions they're asking franchisees. I think there was a section on is franchising right for you? And they asked some helpful questions, and which included about long-term vision and things like that.
Oh, this is interesting. I mean, like, there's so much that we can break through this. There's a tire section, which I would imagine this is a new addition to their guide. I would like to look into this more, but they have a section on working with franchise brokers.
Oh, I didn't see that yet.
Yeah, okay. So the brokers are now have a whole section. So how does the broker select franchises? Some franchise brokers may claim they will suggest only the franchises that meet certain standards. You may think this means that your risk is limited because the broker weeds out poor investments. In fact, some brokers represent any franchisor willing to pay them a commission for sale. A broker who does that might direct you to a franchisor that is failing or doesn't have a strong history. Ask how the broker selects franchisors to represent. Ask to see the selection criteria and how many franchisor the broker has recently turned down. That's an interest. Like that's a valuable piece that I've not seen that in here. And it said, next section, how is the broker paid? Some brokers earn a flat fee regardless of the price of the franchise they sell. Others earn a commission based on the cost of the franchise. These brokers may steer you toward a more costly franchise to increase their commission. Ask who pays the broker and how the payment is calculated. Find out whether the broker earns a commission based on the cost of the franchise. If he or she does, consider whether the broker is suggesting a higher price franchise in order to earn a larger commission. I will tell you, like, these words that I'm reading, they're putting a spotlight on the broker community right now. FTC is coming, like it's in their guide. They're putting a spotlight. That's fascinating.
Yeah, I didn't. It's pretty aggressive language.
Are the broker's earnings claims reliable? I mean, like, that's the section. They said, convince you to buy a particular franchise. A broker may talk about how much money you can make. These claims may not be true and can be misleading. For example, the figures may be based on earnings in an area where they see there is a higher demand for the franchisor's goods or services. And there's a whole section on this.
Well, and it looks like the FTC team did a deep dive into.
That's good. That's not sanitized. That's
no. This is a very deep dive for this guide. Wow.
Well, look, I'm looking forward to working through this. I'm calling this video 1. The objective of these videos is going to now be associated with our own viewpoint on the guide, that as you are reading through this or you're trying to figure out a pathway to buying a franchise, you could point back to this video series and see this all the way through. Again, like I said at the beginning of this, we're going to work through what the guide is. So the next one that we'll do is the franchise business model, and we'll read through what the FTC says, and then we'll give our own insights on that.
I think this is perfect. So for those watching this, we're going to lock this down on franchise investments here.
Lots to uncover, and hopefully, like, this is not just for the franchise buyer. This is also for franchisors to understand advisory that's happening before they even get to your site, because no franchisor is taking the time to educate the buyer. They're going straight to the offering. So if we can use this as a guide, and franchisors use this is a tool that you should be handing out to your franchise buyers, and use this in your drip campaigns. We're going to build out this guide, use it, put it to work. This is the cover sheet of the how to buy a franchise, the complete guide to buying a franchise workbook.
There we go.
But yours truly, FranX. See you later.